Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Next on the programme, we're going to take a look at tests for pregnant women which can detect whether or not a baby is going to be born with Down syndrome. At the moment, the test, which is called non-invasive prenatal testing, is only available privately. That is all going to change next year when it will be rolled out on the NHS. The tests are 99% accurate and promise to reduce the risk of miscarriages linked to the invasive amniocentesis test, previously the only way of accurately diagnosing Downs. But there are warnings this morning that it could be misused to selectively abort babies on the basis of their sex. Policy advisors at the Nuffield Council on Bioethics also warn introducing this test on the NHS could lead to an increase in the number of terminations following a diagnosis of Down syndrome. They're launching their report with the actress Sally Phillips, whose son Ollie has Down syndrome. Last year, she made a documentary looking at the ethical issues surrounding these new tests.
Knock, knock! Who's there? Chicken!
Chicken who?
Buck, buck!
That's rubbish.
Knock, knock! Who's that? 85. 85 who? Doctor!
This is Ollie, my son. He likes chocolate ice cream. He likes Barcelona Football Club. He also has Down syndrome. When Ollie was diagnosed 11 years ago, I never could have imagined that our family was going to end up looking like this. Or like this. Or like this. But although Ollie's the reason I started making this film, it's not just a film about him. It's not just about Down syndrome either. It's a film that asks the question, what kind of society do we want to live in? And who do we think should be allowed to live in it?
So will it lead to an increase in the number of terminations for children with Downs? Let's talk to Lucienne Cooper. Lucienne's 8-year-old son Billy has Down syndrome. Also with us, Nurse Sev Morris, whose 1-year-old baby Benjamin has Downs. She had the NIPT blood test with Benjamin, which showed positive. Julia Langdon had an amniocentesis in the early 80s and decided to abort her Downs baby. And hopefully in a moment, we're going to speak to Holly Riseborough, who's been on the programme before. She's 21, she has Down syndrome. Lucienne, I think you were 32 weeks pregnant when you found out. How did you react?
I had amniocentesis at 30 weeks because of complications in my pregnancy. I chose to have the amniocentesis. I came back with the initial screen as having a high chance of having a child with Down syndrome, but I chose not to have amnio at that point because of the risk of miscarriage, and I knew that I was going to have my child, whether it had Down syndrome or not. But actually, when I was given the diagnosis, I was shocked. I didn't know anyone with Down syndrome. I had the outdated notion that a life with Down syndrome would be devastating for my child, devastating for me, changing my life, my whole family's life. And I like to say that now, my son's 7 actually, 7 years down the line, it isn't anything like the dismal life I expected to have at that point of diagnosis. Billy has a very fulfilling life. He's doing very well at school, and he enhances our family like any other child our other son that we have. Yeah. So yeah, I was devastated, but now, you know, it's a joyous thing. It really is.
Nurse Sev, how is Benjamin doing?
He's thriving as well, as you can see.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's doing very well.
And when you had the NIPT,
yes,
which will be rolled out on the NHS, when you found out that Benjamin was going to be Downs, how did you and your partner react?
For us, it was a big shock, and we went through a type of mourning process. You know, first of all, we'd had the gender because we'd had it privately, so we were looking forward to having a girl. So we're like, oh, it's another boy because we've already got an 7-year-old boy, Ephraim, who's an amazing big brother. And sorry, my darling, come. And so for us, we went through this mourning process of, you know, what's it going to mean for his life? Is he going to be able to get married, have children, have a happy life, have a good job, all these things you kind of hope for your children. And for us, we were glad that we had the NIPT because it gave us a time to go through that process before having Benjamin. Whereas if we'd found out after giving birth at that point, then it would have been much more difficult to go through that process then, to build the bond, the relationship. So we were glad we had it. And I've had it again with this new pregnancy,
Right.
this time on the NHS. So we weren't informed of the sex, but we got a low risk for Down syndrome, which again gave us peace of mind. Now we can just focus on enjoying the pregnancy and getting ready for our child to come.
I think we can talk now to Holly, who has been on our programme before. Holly Riseborough. Hello, Holly, how are you? Oh, I think we need to open your microphone. Just give me 1 sec. Hi, Holly, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, we can hear you now. How are you?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for talking to us again. I remember you telling me last time you love gymnastics. Tell us what your biggest achievement is.
My big achievement, I've been to America. And I really enjoyed it, really. It's a big achievement, really.
Absolutely.
So good.
Yeah. And and you were telling us too about working at Tesco. How is that going?
Yeah. Really, really good, thank you. I work on checkouts. And I really enjoyed it, Tesco's. Really enjoyed it.
And is that 1 day a week at the moment?
Yeah, it's 1 day a week. Just on Mondays, and that's it.
What would you say is the best thing about your life?
My best thing in my life, I would think in my life I'm really, really good. I'm in college, acting, modelling, dancing, outside of college.
Yeah. And what about your mum and dad? How supportive are they?
Oh, Mum. My mum's like really supporting me, really, because like she's there all the time. And my dad, he's there, always there with me all the time, because he always look after me every single time.
Wow. Well, that is lovely to hear, Holly. Thank you so much for coming on the programme. It's really nice to talk to you again.
Okay.
Thanks, Holly.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
Julia, let me bring you in. You had prenatal screening in the 80s and decided to have a termination, I think, in 1982. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I was 36, rising 37 at the time, and I had become pregnant by accident, and I wasn't in the position to look after a disabled child, and I asked for an amniocentesis. And actually, I was initially refused because at the time, they only started testing at 37.
Right.
But and they said I was more likely to miscarry from the test than to have a Down's baby. I pointed out that if I miscarried from the test, I could get pregnant again, but if I had a Down's baby, I was in no position to look after it, and I would have to give up work, and I'm not saying that I would put my work for my children, I wouldn't, of course. But I wasn't in the right circumstances, and my pregnancy was proved to be Down's. And I realised then that actually I had taken the decision already when I had asked for the test and successfully secured it. And I had to give birth. It was a very traumatic and difficult time. My partner and I were very, very traumatised by it, obviously, but we went on to have 2 lovely children.
Yeah.
When things were sorted between us.
Let me ask you all about this test being rolled out on the NHS. As I said, at the moment, you can only get it privately. It is non-invasive, much reduced risk of miscarriage. Do you think it's a good thing, Lucienne, that it's going to be available more widely?
I think as long as it is handled with the enormity that it implies, then it could be a good thing, absolutely. But we need to make sure that if we're talking about Down syndrome,
I mean, there's two things I want to ask you
Yes,
about. First of all, Down
obviously.
syndrome, and also terminations based on the sex of the child,
Yes, I
which
mean,
this test can
completely
show.
different thing. But in terms of Down syndrome, they need to make sure that there is support out there if you're given a positive diagnosis of Down syndrome, that you're given balanced information. It is all about both sides of the story, so that the idea in my mind of the NIPT for Down syndrome is to give people time to prepare for having a disabled child, as well as making that choice of whether a disabled child is something that they can deal with. But they need to have both sides of the story of life with Down syndrome. I mean, it isn't easy, as you know. It does have its difficulties, but doesn't parenting anyway.
Yes, and you were not given both sides, as you would put it.
I wasn't, no.
No.
I was one of, I run a Down syndrome support group currently, and I do know that this still does go on in the NHS. I was told, I'm sorry, by my GP that I had a child with Down syndrome. I was given no up-to-date information, no signposting to support groups, no idea of what life with Down syndrome would be.
What about you, Nurse Ev? Were you given that?
Exactly the same, yeah,
Really?
exactly the same situation. No support. I'm still waiting for counselling. He's a year. They didn't give us any positive information, and it was the same actually when we paid privately to have the NIPT. We received actually no information from them. And from the NHS side, we were pushed to abort. We were repeatedly asked, are you still committed to the pregnancy? Are you still committed? Are you still committed to the pregnancy? At every consultant appointment, we were told, I'm sorry.
Do they not have an obligation to check your state of mind by asking that question?
Yes, they need to check, maybe in the first meeting, but once they've heard us say, no, we're Christians, we're already set from the outset that
Right.
we're not going to be aborting our child, you know, we're going to go ahead, we just need your support now. What does it mean?
Yeah.
What does having Down syndrome mean? And the explanation we received from the consultant, well, you know, these days it doesn't mean much, you know, they live a bit longer, so it's all right, and, you know, he'll never be a rocket scientist, he'll never be Prime Minister, but it's all right because Down's kids are good with music.
Oh my gosh,
That
are you
was our
joking me?
No, I wish I was.
Time and time
It's
again.
constant. It happens every day.
And through my support group, I know that people who've chosen to continue with a pregnancy, having had a positive diagnosis antenatally, like Nurse says, are constantly reminded, you know, are you sure? It's not too late. And this has to stop. There needs to be set protocols that professionals have to follow if you continue to have a pregnancy with a child with Down syndrome.
Julie, let me ask you about the warning today from the Nuffield Council about this test being more widely available, and therefore there are concerns it might lead to terminations on the basis of the sex of a child, so sex-selective terminations. What do you think of that?
Well, I don't think that's a desirable thing at all. There are obviously cultural issues here.
Yeah.
And I think that would be very alarming. My only point is I think that women, parents, should be able to choose if they want to raise a disabled child. I have two friends who have had Down's babies, and they have had a very different, well, difficult lives, but one has been very happy. But the little girl is not nothing. Is quite disabled. Is quite severely disabled. So I do know, and I understand, but I don't think I think it should not be used for selective choice of what sort of baby you want. Designer babies, we call it, of course.
Let me read some messages from people around the country. This tweet from Lose the Label. Defining a person by their diagnosis is dehumanising. Please say a baby with Downs or a person with Downs, please. Joe says, we should be ashamed for introducing these Downs tests. It suggests that disabled people are not worth living. Elizabeth says all NHS staff need to be educated with up-to-date information on Down syndrome. And Kerry says, who among us is qualified to judge who is deserving of life and who isn't? Thank you very much, all of you, for coming on the programme. Thank you. Good luck with your third one. Good luck.